Welcome to the Rollwise Podcast, the weekly show that explores all things RPGs. I'm Mike, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by my fellow RPG enthusiast, Brent
Hello, everybody.
and Jeff.
Hi.
So settle in, and we're going to kick off this week's show. So this week, we got a few things to discuss. First, we want to start with some announcements. We're going to just give a quick nod to the people that go over at Kobold Press, because their Kickstarter's going. Then we're going to also talk a little bit about 24-hour RPGs. It seems tis this season, and over at RPG Geek, they are doing their 24-hour RPG contest. And so if you are interested in that type of thing or want to see the results, we'll talk about that a little bit. And then also, we took it upon ourselves to read a prior entry, many years ago entry, it seems like. And we actually reviewed the game, saw what a 24-hour RPG could look like, and we're going to give you some impressions of what that was. So let's go ahead and start. So first off, Tales of the Valiant. That is the name, and I believe we discussed that a few weeks ago about how Kobold Press has gone with that as their name instead of Fantasy Core Role-Playing Gennaro name that they had as a placeholder. And they just started Kickstarter 2 days ago. And anybody want to guess how much they have now in their kitty?
Are you still watching the numbers tick up as pledges come in?
I am. $666,486 and 28 days left to go. So they are fully funded. So at this point, it looks like they're looking to unlock some of their stretch goals, which have some pretty interesting items. They have an adventure at their $700,000 stretch goal, as well as a few other things.
They did fund in 27 minutes too. That's worth mentioning. Like they funded pretty quick. So
congratulations to everybody at Kobold Press. That's impressive.
Yeah. And I think that that's really cool that they were able to put together a product, generate some excitement. And I hope with the next 28 days, people, take a look at the product, see if they want to purchase it, and see if that's really what their thing is. Because I do have to say that at least based on the, the marketing materials that they put on the Kickstarter page, those books look pretty sweet. And if I had $165 to pledge at, I would love to get some of those physical copies that they have there. I'm not as excited about the $6.99 pledge, but then again, it's a little outside of my wallet right now.
Mine too.
So I think we'll let you guys know when we if we see more on this and if they have any more information on it. But so if you guys like Kobold Press, hit them up. And
just to kind of fill everybody in, Tales from the Valiant, that's what it is, correct? Because I'm not looking at it.
Tales of the Valiant.
Tales from the Valiant is their, did we say this already? Is their replacement for the, we did say that, didn't we? Yep. Never mind.
Yeah. Is there, you know what? It's their replacement for 5th edition, or at least it's their branch off 5th edition. I feel like kind of what happened here is that, do you guys watch that Loki show on Disney?
I've not seen Loki yet.
No?
I'm aware of it, but I haven't watched.
Well, there's basically the entire idea is that they want to keep all the timelines from branching out and all those kind of things. And I feel like what's happened is that the hands at the end of the universe are kind of messing up because all the role-playing branches are starting to happen, and now we're going to have the whole multiverse of madness and all that stuff.
And we can pretend that the branch of the stupid thing that I just said I didn't say, so we can.
Yeah, that was a different timeline. You guys just
and it's all because of
you all imagined it.
Our friends at Wizards of the Coast, and
I
want to say incompetence, but I'll go with tone deafness. But yeah.
What's weird is I feel less stressed about role playing now that I stopped paying attention to Hasbro and WotC. I don't know why, but
100%. Yeah.
There's a lot of great products out there, and I think we're slowly finding them, and we are going to try them out and talk about them because a lot of these products deserve some attention.
Yeah, it gets stressful when you're trying to keep up with everything that people are blundering along. So yeah. I just don't want Pinkertons at my house. Well, that too.
Jeez.
There's our Wizards of the Coast digs for the week.
Yeah,
there we go.
So switching gears, talk a little bit about the 24-hour RPG contest that RPG Geek is putting together. or has at least put together. It looks like they've done it for quite some time, but they weren't the original, it doesn't seem. According to our internet sleuthing, maybe internet spelunking, I don't know. Spelunking sounds like that's probably more appropriate in this case.
Spelunking is such a rough word, dude. Just
you mean the Roll-Wise Research and Development Department, which is you.
Yeah, that's me. So I went onto the dark web to find some real information about the origins of this 24-hour game, where it may have started from, and all of those kind of things. And honestly, it seems like the entire process was, it was basically stolen from the 24-hour comic book contest that seems to be running quite strong. Now, do you guys know about the 24-hour comic book and its rules and all that stuff?
I do. I believe Scott MacLeod started it.
Yeah, so Scott MacLeod started the 24-hour comic book dare, I guess. That might be the way to put it, back in 1990.
Challenge. Let's go with challenge.
I think nowadays is the challenge, but in the beginning it was a dare between two friends to say, like, we are the slowest artists in comic book history. Like, we're basically fighting for lastest place. And we want to kind of challenge ourselves to create an entire 24-page comic book in 24 hours. And each of these pages should have about 6 panels per page.
That is a lot. That is a lot of pages. That is a lot of art to crank out.
That is a lot of art to crank out.
It seems like a lot. And so apparently it was him and his buddy Steve Bissett. And I don't know who Steve Bissett is. I'm not familiar with the
comic artist.
Yep.
Yeah. And so apparently those two are the ones that went at it. And did you guys have you guys seen Scott MacLeod's original work? The original 24-hour comic book they wrote is...
I think I saw it, but it's 15, 20 years ago. So can I recall it? Not at all.
Well,
and it's not stick figures, I assume. it's yeah.
Well, it isn't. And so what's interesting to me about the entire process is that basically he was of the mindset, you might be tempted, if you're going to do a 24-hour comic book, that, you might want to be as minimalist as possible, make as clean as line as possible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he kind of says, no, you want to see as much as you could shove into that as possible. And so when you read his work, which was actually called A Day's Work, and it was pretty much the story about this guy who looks like he's got a corporate drone kind of job. And it's like really heavy lines, very dark. It's only black and white. Like there's no, he doesn't have enough time to do all that work, right? Yeah. But it is just like this weird thing that it's kind of definitely reflective of the 90s, but it's got the strange kind of almost, I think he called it like Colombian style, like head on the thing. He's wearing it, and this guy's running around town, and he's beating people up, and he's yelling, "What is the frequency, Kenneth?" And I was like, why is that familiar to me? I had to look it up, but that's
a song.
That's a song.
From REM.
Yeah,
it is. But you guys know what it's based on, though? It's actually based on something before that.
No, I don't think I do.
Because, and this is my weird factoid for the day, because apparently the REM song is based on this guy who went up and found Dan Rather and started beating him and said, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" Because he thought that the people with the satellites were beaming signals into his brain, of course.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of a surreal comic book. It's a little bit strange with characters that make appearances like, I am the dark and tumbling rock. I am the heaving beast of fertility. I am the bounty of Stop and Shop. It's got a little bit of a commercialist tone to it and all that stuff. But for being a 24-hour comic book, I mean, I've seen comics today that have probably taken longer that have a similar quality to this. Mm-hmm. Now, the story itself is a little bit confusing as hell. It doesn't really have a lot to it, but it's 24 hours. So that brings us to the role-playing game, folks, and they decided to do something similar. Now, it seems as though the one that we're going to look at today, the vsmonsters that was put up by Phil J. Reed, I don't remember. He actually tried to adhere as closely as possible to that 24-page guideline. So 24 pages in 24 hours. And that's a continuous 24 hours. That's not like just 24 hours of work over the course of several weeks. But that's 24 hours, just one day, get her done, and see what you can put together. Whereas the current RPG Geek submissions do not seem to have that same 24-page goal. So I'm not sure. I have to look at some of their previous submissions to see if that's something that they dropped as kind of a design requirement, because maybe it's just not as helpful in game design, with all the one-page RPGs out there and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
So what did you guys?
I don't think vsmonsters, I don't think he made the 20 and 25 page limit, he said. I think he was just under, like 4 pages short.
He was like 20 pages, but one of those pages was him going, didn't make it. So, maybe 19 pages plus a mark.
Yeah.
But yeah, so your impressions. So I think when I mentioned like we should talk about this 24-hour RPG contest, what was your guys' initial thoughts as to what kind of outputs come from this thing?
Well, my first thought is anytime you have some sort of writing project, doing it fast isn't always the best quality. So that was kind of a concern for me, is just how, what type of game is going to come out of 24 hours and how rife is it going to be with, problematic structure, I guess, is the things that I was looking at. But vsmonsters came out pretty good. It's pretty polished, really. I don't know if he went back after the 24 hours and polished it up a little bit for people to read, but it definitely looks pretty polished.
Yeah.
So,
hey, what about you, Jeff? What were your thoughts? I kind of understand where Brent's coming from, that you spend 24 hours. What could you possibly get out of 24 hours of work, right?
Well, I think, in looking at, like some of the stuff that's won or, placed second or third, like especially like in 2022, making sure that you're not trying to pack too many mechanics into the system. It seems like storytelling becomes very popular, giving the players a lot of agency, and trying to seed them with ideas and guidelines and, to help them, carry that out, is a key thing, because boy, in 24 hours system bloat would be a real issue.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed even in vsmonsters is because of their limited time frame, like they very much all feel kind of samey to simple games. Like they all feel sort of like that OSR minimalist feel. And like I understand it in the 24-hour game because it's like they have to keep it simple because it's not very long to write it. So like even vsmonsters, like the mechanics are super simple. There's easy stats, easy abilities. And I definitely saw the inspiration of like Over the Edge, that role-playing game where like you do stuff, you have stuff that is stuff that you do, and then you have stuff that you are bad at. Like, and that's very much an Over the Edge trope and a very narrative trope. I did think it was interesting that he shows his system of randomization to be cards. That was a little bit interesting. One of the first things that cards made me think of is that this would be impossible to play online. Like that would be pretty difficult.
There's got to be a deck dealer or something like that, so that you can find somewhere. But
there has to be something, yeah.
But yeah, but overall, it was pretty good. It seemed pretty good in 24 hours. I was surprised.
Well, so I think there's maybe a little bit of a mind shift between when this was written for vsmonsters, and just in case anybody's curious, vsmonsters,
2003.
It came out in 2003, and it was by Philip Reed, and and what I think he did is that, in terms of like what he was trying to accomplish is that, he was just sitting down. He wanted to challenge himself to basically put something out there. And from what I think that I understand about it, because this is like an older game, is that he did commercialize a version of it later that was better edited, had the page numbers and everything like that added to the page parts that he didn't add in this version. Like he just said like, what, I'm going to bed, fuck it. And then but in the new RPG contest, what I think that they kind of are shying away from is that, unlike him, where he had kind of taken the idea of wanting to use cards and he had tried to use it in a different system, this one, it doesn't want you to have any preparation work. You're just supposed to start with a blank slate, and you basically say, in 24 hours, I want to create a system. Now I truly wonder how you could start a 24-hour thing and not have some sort of idea what the kind of game that you're going to run in that. So, I mean, to the honor system as best as possible, what you're trying to do is not have developed a system and then insert it into this 24-hour period kind of.
But I mean, that's a weird rule to me, because pretty much any rule system that you use is probably going to have been done already. Cards are maybe the most original that you could think of. And he did say he used it in a past game, but like that means any game that's rolls a D20, like
exactly, like
any game that rolls D6s, any game that rolls D10s, like there's all bigger games that use those. So that's kind of a weird rule. Even diceless role playing, which I saw there was one that said it was totally diceless. But even Amber diceless role playing is
a thing,
like the progenitor of that. Like, so that's kind of a weird thing to me, because you're definitely in 24 hours, you're definitely going to draw a lot on past experience and games that inspire and things that inspired you and games that inspired you.
Well, and that's the part that's curious to me, is that, I mean, I think I'm going to go back through some of these and see what they've put together, because I mean, if you're trying to create an original work for this 24-hour RPG that's basically like free for anybody to grab, but then you can edit and maybe commercialize on it later if you strike gold, let's say, and you create a good idea within that 24 hours. But I just wonder how much your subconscious is going to lead you to systems that you already have some level of familiarity with or tinker with. Because I mean, what's the likelihood that you create a system from scratch that is totally unbalanced?
It's possible.
High. Very high.
Well, not even that, just like original dice systems. There's only so much you can do with random number generators. Unless you're doing something crazy, like, okay, you get a dartboard and you put it up on the wall. Okay, you throw a dart and where you hit, that's your roll, quote unquote. Like, unless it's something like that's totally outside the box, like.
So what you're saying is this is our brainstorming session for our 24-hour RPG.
Yeah.
So
Brent's dartboard.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I understand is you have to get a calendar for your recycling. You have to get a dartboard and darts, and then you need pieces of fruit, preferably bananas.
Moving along. Inside joke, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry. So the funny part was I was originally going to say D4s, but then I remembered I know a game that uses D4s as its dice mechanic. Nibiru uses D4s for its randomization.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, and I mean, like the only game that I think that I saw that changed up dice in any fun kind of way was that I think Fantasy Flight and the Genesis system used a narrative dice thing when we talked about that. And they have and they're funny dice. If you look at the Fantasy Flight dice, those are an entirely different randomization thing.
That's because Fantasy Flight likes to sell things that only they can sell. Like they will put icons on dice that you can't buy from anybody else. No, it's not. It's irritating as shit.
Well, but they have a free dice roller on the iOS store. So
that's nice. But their physical products are oftentimes very irritating, in my opinion. They're irritating. But anyways, so it would be really hard to come up, like, that seems like reinventing the wheel to me. Like, how do I make something that's different than a wheel that somebody hasn't thought of that does the exact same thing? Yeah, I feel like that's what making a new dice system is, or randomization system is to me, is what sort of wizardry are you doing?
Yeah, and that might make it a little bit more challenging, because Jeff, did you see how many entries that they had? I didn't think it was a lot of entries per year, but I could have been missing.
I didn't see the full number of entries, but there was a relatively limited number of votes.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a big task to take on any of these 24-hour challenges.
Mm-hmm.
It's a surprisingly long time. It looks like there was 2 pages of stuff in 2022. I'm just trying to look at the site here.
That wasn't many, was it?
Yeah, well, it's a niche thing and a niche.
Yeah, it's kind of a niche thing. So I'm impressed that there, so it looks like there's maybe 13 in 2022. If I'm interpreting it right, I'm sorry if there were hundreds of submissions and I messed that up. I'm just looking at the 24-hour RPG webpage, and it looks like I'm counting 13. So,
that, you know what? That's good enough for me. So anybody that was 14 and above, sorry, you're dead to us.
You should have got on the first page we looked at.
Hey, I clicked to the second page. It said there were 2 pages. I clicked on both.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. So yeah. So I mean, so ideally, like, this is probably not the prime way to design a game, but I think there is some value in just forcing yourself to like put it all on paper and just saying, hey, this is done. And then if you decide that you like what you've got, then build it up to something more. And if you don't like it, toss it. Who cares?
Yeah. Even what he said at the end of Versus Monsters, where he said, if you're thinking about doing a bigger game, doing this might be a good idea of what like sort of problem solving and stuff that you're going to do in creating a game. Like he said that in like the little blurb where he's like, I'm going to bed. He said that up top. So
yeah. So that's the 24-hour RPG challenge. What it is to design a RPG in 24 hours. RPG Geek is hosting it, as they've hosted it for the last few years. And if you if you like the RPG Geek coins that they get, I think that's what their prices are. I don't know what that buys you. I never get into that.
Prestige, Mike. The answer is prestige.
If you want internet prestige points, you can submit your RPG Geek.
I mean, it's a pretty good. It would be a pretty good gateway into the industry. Like, if you can, anytime you can say, "Hey, I wrote something that won something." Yeah. It's always good to say that when you're trying to sell yourself to a company as another writer. So, like, I could see that. Also, I do have a question for you, Mike. In your dark web research, have you found the Diana Jones Award yet? Because I know that's what you're really looking for on the dark web.
So, funny story. Oh. Actually, I'll save that for another time. So let's actually dive in a little bit more on the Versus Monsters game itself.
Yeah.
Now I think that we've talked a little bit about it, but just to give a high level overview, and honestly, for the 24-hour game approach, like if he did all of this in 24 hours in terms of like artwork, design, layout, and everything like that, I'm actually pretty impressed, because as Brent said when he commented, it has a lot more polish than I would have. Like, if you just gave that to me and said, hey, how long do you think it took this person? I'd have been like, a lot longer than 24 hours, honestly. So basically, what is the game about? It's obviously a role-playing game, and it takes place, you're taking the place of monster hunters in 19th century America, kind of in the Edgar Allan Poe-esque horror story vein. Is that the right read on that?
Yeah.
And so what you do is you're going to create some characters. You're going to go around, and it's players versus monsters. Now, the idea is that with the game, it's very minimalistic in terms of attributes and everything like that, and characters can be built very, very quickly. The character sheet is actually just your name. For some reason, he included a spot for player name, just in case you forgot. I don't know why he did that, but
that was general snark.
Which snark and sarcasm were very heavy in this.
That was general snark, I believe.
He also had a section called blah, which was your something personal about your character. You have your health. Everyone begins with 10 health. Then you have your stuff, which is your advantages, disadvantages, and drawbacks, and all that kind of stuff. As for your attributes, you have fighting, defending, thinking, and running. And I was trying to think about it, and I was like, I mean, as it's an overgeneralization in all of those, but running seemed like the only one that seemed a little out of place, but maybe not really. What do you guys think about those attributes?
Running would be like speed. It would be like your movement. So I think that's fine. Fighting, defending, thinking. Yeah, I think speed. Doesn't he use speed like movement in a more conventional RPG?
Yeah, I think that I think because it's not a very tactical game, it doesn't really require you to have like like battle maps and all those kind of things laid out. I mean, it basically is like, I run away from the monster. Oh, opposed roll. grab your playing cards, see what happens.
Well, and it also includes like jumping and climbing. So if you're climbing under duress or like trying to jump over a pit, it would be what influences that would be what that's for.
Yep.
Weird that it's called running instead of jumping,
mobility,
jumping and climbing. Like he could have just called it that, because that's neither of those are really running. But hey, he did it in 24 hours.
It's true. It's true.
I'm running straight up a wall instead of climbing.
Yeah. And so then what you do is you take values 6, 4, 3, and 3, and you place them in each of the attributes. And that's not too hard. Now, what I did also think was interesting is that under the stuff category, you could take 2 good stuffs and 2 bad stuffs. And was this the part that you said reminded you a lot of like Over the Edge?
Yeah. Over the Edge. Both editions, first and second and third, kind of have this sort of thing where you kind of take narrative abilities and say, this is the good stuff. This is the good thing that I do. This is something I'm not as good at, and this is something I'm actually like bad at. That's a flaw. So that was definitely influenced by that, which is cool because that's a cool game.
Yeah. And do you think that, it felt like it fit here. And it was one of the few places that I saw that the suit of the card actually started to matter when you were doing your drawing, if I saw it correctly. So like, for example, the inexperienced bad stuff, if you drew a card and you showed it to the other players, because it was like, if you've never fought monsters before or even been in a fight with another human, on your turn, draw 1 card and show it to the other players. If the result is a heart or diamond, you may not take an action this turn. So I thought that was nice that that he actually incorporated some of the suits into the randomness of the drawing, and instead of just having it be the numbers on the cards, et cetera, et cetera. So, as for the mechanics themselves, as we started to discuss, the mechanics are you basically just draw cards anytime you have a check or a challenge, as he calls it in this game, and you draw cards equal to your attribute. The one thing that I thought was funny is did you see that offhanded comment that he made? Is like the game master should use his own judgment when determining what actions are challenges, but the players are encouraged to beat the GM if he requires too many tests.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy had it out for us.
He definitely had an attitude when he was writing this.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. Although it did also remind me that if you look at something written in 2003 versus 2023, what would be considered acceptable language, you can tell this didn't go through a diversity.
Well, yeah, obvious. Yeah, that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, but yeah, combat's pretty easy. Seems like it uses the same card pulling process and everything like that. And then it, of course, uses damage based on the types of weapons that you use. And the damage is determined by the difference in your values for your cards. So your defense your offense versus its defense determines how much damage you do, but your damage is capped based on the type of weapon that it is. And this is, I thought, where the most complicated part of the thing was.
Right.
And so you can also get bonus damage if you're using guns, because guns kill things.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the end, it seems like we've pretty much explained the game as it stands, and I think just for a minimalistic approach to a game, and basically saying, "Hey guys, we got nothing better to do. Let's grab some beer and some pizza, and let's go find a zombie and kill it using this weird ass system that he's put together." I actually think you could have fun, but I don't think that's the strength of the system. I think that it's just you with some other people drinking beer and eating pizza could have fun.
Yeah, I think it would be fun as a novelty. And I guess one thing I will say back to our previous conversation is stuff like this, where he said under the monsters section, where it says description, some blah 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 amount monsters to give you something to read, and meat is something to fill space. Like it's that sort of thing, less snarky, of course. It's that sort of thing that like I would worry about in a 24-hour game. Is like just shit you're putting in there to fill space.
Well, yeah. If you're holding yourself, and I know that the comic challenge was 24 pages, right? So a page an hour. I don't know that putting words on a piece of paper, graphics on a piece of paper for the sake of hitting an artificial limit in your head. Like, I would rather see somebody design a relatively robust, complete role-playing system in 24 hours. And if they can do that in 8 pages, I think that that's more successful than getting to 24 pages with a lot of filler. And I don't think that he's got a ton of filler, but there's filler.
Oh, he has quite a bit of filler, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Well, all the monsters add quite a bit.
Well, it's not even that. It's just like his overall general commentary as he's going through this, because his is like the meta commentary about how much he's actually antagonistic against the readers, that by reading this, you've pushed him to do this. It almost feels like you made me challenge myself in this 24-hour role-playing thing. So therefore you're going to be stuck with the results. So it's a little bit snarky.
Yeah, it's and I guess that's the stuff that I worry about in a 24-hour game. Even people who someone honestly just trying to do it, not be snarky, like the temptation, if you have this arbitrary page goal, would be to like make maybe stuff up. Well, like rules you don't need. If you don't need them, why are they in here? Like, and if you do need them or they're optional, you call them that. Don't be snarky. But I mean, really. But I guess that's the thing, is that the potential to do something extra or unnecessary becomes greater when you have that one time limit and B arbitrary page goal, I think.
Sure.
But I think overall, I think the game is playable. I don't know. Like, I don't know if somebody's going to put together a 24-hour game that's like, oh, we're going to run a 40 game campaign with versus monsters.
No, I mean, you could with a clever enough DM, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, there's a lot of games that don't necessarily focus on progression, on, that being a huge part of it. I mean, us having that more D&D-esque lineage, we see, like, oh, I want to level up as we play through 40 sessions. But maybe some people don't think that's a big deal. And it's more like, the monster of the week, like, how do we solve this particular challenge? And
I'm not even saying from a progression standpoint. I'm just saying from a game, just how it's written, like it's written to be played like a one shot, I think. Whereas if you want to play a campaign, again, I always look at a game as like, okay, this is a game about monster hunting. Is there a game that has longevity or I could play that is better than this one? And Monster of the Week is the first one that comes to mind. It's about Monster Hunters too. So, I mean, this is before that, but that's what I'm saying is like, if you're going to run a campaign, this is probably not the book you're going to pick up.
But if you want to try something fun and quirky with different mechanics than rolling dice,
yeah, 100%.
And you know what? You may find that it adds different kinds of tension to be drawing your cards and find out you're like, oh shit, I've got the worst poker hand on the planet here. I mean, that could add a different type of tension that dice doesn't have. And it does seem as though in this game, you're very disposable. So like the character, like he obviously didn't spend a lot of time on like, giving you mechanics or tables or ideas on how to generate large backstories within this, nor did he give you a lot of setting information, basically saying, if you want to run a game in this, you should probably research 19th century Americana and go from there yourself, which is fine. But you might find that mechanic is fun, and you might find that, just like any other thing, you can hack in extra things that you want to do, and maybe it serves as a basis or foundation for other games. But to your point, Brent, I agree. I think that if I was to look at this and say, like, the game by itself doesn't get me excited about it, and I don't have any particular Monster Hunter stories that I need to run right now, so
yeah. And so and the other thing is like I would say he feels that way, even like with blah being all of your character stuff. Like there's really not a narrative idea here. It's more like he has a combat system that he built and he wanted to try out, which might, like you said, it might be interesting and you might be able to use it in like a different game, or if there's a different thing you want to do, for sure. But
yeah, it just makes it seem like it might be complicated to make more intricate systems with playing cards. But I don't know. It actually kind of inspires me. Maybe I want to go check out and see what other kind of playing card systems.
Deadlands.
Didn't the original Deadlands?
Yep, yeah. Deadlands. It still uses cards.
But is that the only playing card game?
Savage Worlds uses cards for initiative. Troika uses cards for initiative.
Mm-hmm.
So there's card elements to certain games, but I don't know if there's a full rant. I don't know if there's a full like. Oh no, there is one. What is it called? It's oh god. Give me a second. It's based off of a miniatures game. Let me look. I can remember this in a minute.
Yeah, I know that I've come across a couple. They're not other than Deadlands because I had, you know, a weird fascination with Deadlands back in the 90s.
Through the Breach is the name of the game, and Deadlands is interesting because it was like the first like Western game. But Through the Breach is works off cards, and it is set in Malifaux, which is a miniatures game, but they use cards. They use cards for both their miniature game and the role playing game.
Oh, cool.
And that system is all cards.
Okay.
Which I haven't ever played it, but I own a copy.
Well, but you know, the idea might
that never happens.
Well, but it's more just the idea of trying something different, right? You know, I mean, how many dice can you really chuck before you go, hey, you know, let's take a break, try something new. I don't know if playing cards were my first choice, but hell, I'll try it. Everybody has playing cards, right?
Theoretically, sure.
You can get them at a gas station for like $2. So if you don't, you can go find some pretty easy.
It's true.
Usually.
If you want to play with gas station playing cards, Brent, yes, you can.
Okay.
Hey, have you not seen the world of playing card Kickstarter?
I
with
have
the fancy backs.
I have. I saw a guy that collects like different decks of cards, and I was like, wow.
I mostly avoid it because I think I would fall into that, like, oh no, I have to have this, and I have to have this, and I have to have this, and then I'd have 150 decks of playing cards that I'm too scared to use. They're too precious to actually use to play a game.
Yeah, and the cardistry cards, like there's those the cardistry where people like do magic tricks with them, like that's a big thing too.
Oh yeah. Sorry for the aside.
I think there's a couple of games that use tarot cards too, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is.
Yeah.
Now the funny thing is that like all of this, apparently whatever the hell you guys are talking about is whooshing over my head in regards to the card TikTok backer kits, whatever. So what exactly is that?
You guys are saying that people are look at decks of cards, with fancy backs.
There's people that buy
different materials,
fancy playing cards.
They're impressive looking.
Gold leaf, like it's playing cards as an art form, is what it is.
There we go. Wow, Brent, that was elegant. I like that.
Well, that's fair. Okay. So needless to say, I think actually we're going to have a little bit of a shorter episode this time because we talked about our 24-hour RPGs. We've talked about vsmonsters, and I think we'd like to close it this week on basically saying, if you're interested in seeing what people are putting out there for the 24-hour RPGs, go to RPG Geek, see what people are putting up. In the middle of June, go ahead and vote. If you have a chance to read through some of their stuff, give people ratings, let them know how they did, and you never know, you may help a person decide that they've got a great idea and polish it up for a better game. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jeff so he can tell you where to find us, and Brent will close us out.
Hey, if you would like to make some comments about today's episode, you can leave a comment on the YouTube video. You can reach us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Rollwise, or by email rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always with my parts, I hope everybody's well. Be safe out there, and as always, roll well and roll wise. Thank you, everybody, and scene.